Why would you want to run Night Below in the first place? And if you choose to, what are some things that you need to be aware of before you try updating this beast of a campaign to 5th edition? That's what we're covering in this video, so let's get into it. Let's start with the reasons you might want to run Night Below. First of all, it's an old module. It's an adventure that was pretty popular when it first came out, but it's pretty obscure now. If you talk about running an Underdark campaign nowadays, most people are going to default to Out of the Abyss, or maybe Rise of the Drow. If you go looking hard enough, you can find plenty of Underdark adventures. But Night Below was the first campaign-length Underdark adventure to ever hit the market. While there's a lot of fun to be had in playing the newest adventures, there's just something nostalgic and fulfilling about getting to immerse yourself in one of the classics. The second thing that this adventure has going for it is that it's not tied to any specific campaign setting. There are even notes in the adventure about how you might want to run it in Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms or other settings. Because it was written in this way, it is super easy to adapt to pretty much any generic, stereotypical fantasy setting. Third, and maybe most important, this is an Underdark adventure that doesn't rely on the Drow as a major plot device. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the Dark Elves. I use them in lots of campaigns, love the Drizzt books, but even I want more variety than what Drizzt's hometown has to offer. Night Below, by contrast, has almost no Drow at all, aside from a handful of magic items, a few references that you can point out to players that something is decidedly not Drow, and a single undead creature in a side quest in the 3rd book. If you love the Drow, this gives you the opportunity to use them however you want to, as allies or as PCs or what have you. And if you don't like them, there's absolutely no reason to have to include them at all. Now on to the drawbacks of running Night Below in 5th edition. No module is flawless, and Night Below is no exception. There are plenty of little nitpicks that I have that I'll discuss in future videos in this series, but let's take a look at 3 things you'll want to consider before you even decide to run this module. First of all, Night Below was written for a different edition, so combat balance is going to be all over the place if you attempt to run it word for word with the exact number of creatures in each encounter and so on. I personally don't worry about this too much because I see encounter balance as more of an art than a science, but there are certainly folks out there who want their encounters to fit the suggested formulaic guidelines in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and for those folks, updating the adventure to fit what's suggested here is going to be a monumental task. Second, you need to recognize that the expectations of how the game will be played have changed significantly over the years. One big example of this that is prevalent in Night Below is the expectation that players will grind out and gain XP on side quests and random encounters in between the scenes that actually matter for the plot. Night Below also references the expectation that players will return to the surface to find people to train them to gain levels, and how coming back into contact with NPCs that they have left behind might influence what information they gain along the way and things that may happen. I don't know anybody who expects players to go back to town to train before they level up anymore. And while your players may actually return to town before they go back down into the Underdark, it's probably not going to happen as often as the module suggests. Last and probably most important, this is an older D&D book. And those of you who dig through older D&D books for inspiration and to run modules and so on and so forth will know that there are concepts and themes that haven't really aged well, and that modern audiences will consider distasteful at best, downright offensive at worst. These range from sexism to not cool portrayals of various cultures to giving stat blocks to the children with the expectation that players will fight the kids too. If you're planning to run an old school adventure word for word from the original text, or at least as close as you can while updating to a modern rule set, it's important to address these potential issues with your players as it's likely to make some of them uncomfortable. On the other hand, if you don't want any of those issues to come up in your game, you need to be ready to adjust the adventure accordingly when you find those places in the text. So what's coming next? In the next video, we'll be going through an unboxing of the original Night Below box. If you're interested in running Night Below, I'll put some links in the description below where you can find both the digital copy and physical copies, assuming they're in stock. They can be kind of hard to find nowadays. You can also get the adventure as a PDF on DriveThruRPG, but I love having the physical books that I can hold in my hand and read without having to look at a screen all day. That's it for now. See you in the next one.